to the insect decline or status of insects, a research coordination network webinar series. So we've been hosting webinars every 2 or 3 weeks this winter semester, spring semester, I guess. And it is my pleasure to introduce a very special guest today. So Scott Hoffman Black is an internationally known conservationist who's been at the forefront of the conservation movement for over 3 decades. He's executive director of the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation, which under his leadership has become the premier invertebrate conservation organization in North America. Scott's work has led to the protection and restoration of habitat on millions of acres of rangelands, forests, and farmlands, as well as protection for many endangered species. He's the author of best-selling Gardening for Butterflies and Attracting Native Pollinators, and has written more than 200 other publications. His work has been honored with several awards, including the 2011 Colorado State University College of Agricultural Sciences Honored Alumnus Award, the U.S. Forest Service Wings Across the Americas 2012 Butterfly Conservation Award, and the 2019 Wings Across the Americas International Research Partnership Award. Scott serves on the Advisory Council for the Center for Regenerative Solutions, which is accelerating the implementation of regenerative nature-based climate solutions. And he's also on our steering committee here at the RCN. So we're really excited to hear what's going on at Xerces and bring Scott in and talk about more collaborations. With that, I will turn it over to Scott.
All right. Thank you so much, Christy. I'm going to share. Let's make sure this works. Are you seeing that?
That looks good.
Okay, I want to get it going from beginning. So I want to make sure one last time that that's working and you can hear me?
Yep, full screen and hear you well.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much for that great introduction. I very much appreciate it. I was actually going to give this talk at the Entomological Society symposium that RCN put on last fall. I was unfortunately unable to attend, but I now have a longer version of that. So today I'm going to talk about a strategic vision for insect conservation, and then love to have some dialogue after that. I always like to do my thank yous up front, and I think it's important that way I don't somehow go too long and not be able to thank the important people. The most important people in my life are my wife and kids. They both center me, ground me, and lead to me working even more so that they have a brighter future. I also want to thank Xerces partners. Xerces at its core is a partnership organization. We don't own any land. We're not a land trust or anything like that. And to get our work done, we actually need to work with multiple partners. We have thousands of community scientists and other volunteers, thousands of farmers and land managers, a network of over 100 scientists, some of them here today, federal, state, and local agencies. And I know, the big elephant in the room is what's going on at the federal level. I'm happy to talk a bit about that after I'm done. I will touch on it a couple times in this talk. Dozens of companies and dozens of private foundations. We actually also have over 20,000 Xerces members. So if you are interested, Xerces is driven by donations, so please join today. If you're not in the US or you're interested in other conservation efforts, it is so important right now to donate to your favorite nonprofit, whether they're conservation, whether they're equity. Conservation groups are really reeling right now, and anybody who can step up to help their organizations that they love will be much appreciated. Xerces has changed a lot in my tenure. When I came on to Xerces, we had 3.5 staff. We now have 97 actually 98 staff working across the US and Canada, as well as Mexico, and partnering in other countries. These are the people that I have to thank because they're in the trenches. They're the people out there every day doing incredible conservation work to make change. So this is, we're all here for what I think of a variety of reasons. We love insects. I just find them fascinating and amazing. But from a general public point of view, I think that not everybody's going to follow suit. And I think it's important as we talk about these animals that we talk about how amazingly important they are, from food to wildlife, soil health, water filtration, seed dispersal, pollination, pest control, the list goes on and on and on. I like to say if you love birds, you should like insects, and if you fish, you should conserve insects. Pretty much if you just like life on the planet, you should be thinking about insect conservation. But unfortunately, I'm not going to belabor this as well. I think the data is in. I know we could use more, and we can always learn more, but the data really shows that groups of insects are declining across the board, and we have to take action. And we generally know the causes. Again, I think there's more research that's needed, and that's what's neat about the RCN. But we do know the major drivers, and we need to take action now to address them. A few years ago, I worked with Matt Forrester and Emma Pelton on a paper called Declines in Insect Abundance and Diversity. We know enough to act now. And in that paper, we really pointed out that yes, there's still more research to do, but we don't have to wait until all the research is done to actually take action for these animals. And we pointed out there really more than one thread to this. Individuals can take action, and we're seeing that millions of individuals are doing work for insects and other invertebrates. But governments also need to step up. Individuals cannot do this alone. Our governments need to do a better job at all levels. And we need to do this across landscapes. Whether you live in a town or, even an urban core, or we work in ag, rangelands, natural areas, we have to focus broadly on all of these systems because all of them are vital if we want to conserve insects and their habitat. So, at Xerces, we're all about behavior change. How do you get a broad cross section of people to care about these animals? Um, and then how do you get them to actually take action? How do we communicate in a way that doesn't just get a love for these animals, or even at least a respect? Maybe we don't even need love, we just need them to know they're really important, and then get people to step up. And that's really what Xerces does. And I believe we have a proven holistic approach. This approach is what I started and have honed over the last 25 years at Xerces, and has taken us from a very small organization to 100 strong, working all on invertebrates. And we work with you folks, the research community, on applied research, but we also crowdsource community science data. But then using this science, we educate and provide technical assistance. And we also use this science to inform advocacy in our policy efforts. So I'm going to go through 4 different strategies that we use to do our work, and kind of just lay out some examples of how we do this. So the first is we use applied research and community science to improve the understanding of the biology, distribution, threats, and habitat needs of invertebrates. And we work with lots of academic researchers, public agencies, and even private landowners on these applied research projects. And that's key. These are applied. We're looking at questions that we can try to answer in the short term, not those bigger questions that some of you might look at that are vitally important, I realize, but ours are really focused on those short-term needs. What do these animals need? What do we need to do in their habitats to improve populations of these insects? One of the ways we work is through species status assessments using IUCN or nature served methodology. We assess whole groups. We've assessed all the bumblebees of the Americas, South America, North America, and Central America, fireflies across the US, freshwater mussels in the West. And this really, one, by doing these assessments, we understand which species might need more focus, but they immediately also often lead to funding, and they lead to things like species of greatest conservation need in US states. So assessments can get us the information we need, but also lead to direct conservation. You know, some examples, some of you may have been involved in the state of the butterflies work. We just, us and a whole variety of scientists, a big list, published a peer-reviewed paper in Science, which came out in February. That was disconcerting, again, showing that butterflies are not doing well in the US. But we're going to be putting out a companion report with Cheryl Schultz and others at US Fish and Wildlife Service and USGS, kind of to provide that roadmap. So it's not just these animals are in trouble, it's these animals in trouble, but we feel we have actions that everyone can take, you know, individuals to governments to improve their status. We also are integral to the State of the Bees initiative. It's a big partnership to advance our understanding of these animals, but beyond that, to develop then the best management practices for these animals, to communicate what we find to land managers, farmers, others, so that we can actually make positive change. It's not just species and species groups we work on. We work within habitats to best understand how we manage them for improvement of biodiversity, whether that's farms, rangeland, cities. And this is just one example where we have been asked by some of our largest farmers, what's the benefit beyond biodiversity to some of the work that we do? So we're doing on-farm trials with the USDA and the National Agroforestry Center to assess kind of stacking benefits. Are there multiple benefits to biodiversity conservation in these landscapes? We believe there are. I think other studies have shown there are, but we can further emphasize this and work even with more farmers. This is a project that works in a variety of crops in 4 different parts of the United States. You know, we're looking at water conservation and climate resilience. Do our habitat plantings help with water conservation and resilience? We're looking at soil health and carbon sequestration. Are we sequestering carbon? And soil health studies show that we likely are, but we'll be able to have really real world examples. And of course, we're monitoring biodiversity using some new technologies that are pretty neat. Last, we do a lot of work on pesticides. Applied pesticide work is really vital. We've looked at milkweeds in natural landscapes as well as nurseries, host plants for butterflies in urban parks, you know, bees collecting corn pollen, and right now we're doing studies on mosquito treatment in several states, Iowa and up in the Northeast. We also all know, I think, that no matter how many researchers we have, we cannot truly get enough data on this incredible diversity and abundance of animals that we love. And so Xerces is harnessing tens of thousands of people to both get us data, really, really usable data. But the really cool thing is oftentimes these people become the greatest advocates for these animals. There's really a really double benefit to this. So our main community science projects are our Bumblebee Atlas effort, our Western Monarch Count, and our Monarch Milkweed Mapper, and our Firefly Atlas. I'm going to talk about Bumblebee Atlas and our Monarch work. I can't quite fit everything in. Happy to come back and do a deep dive, or have one of my staff do a deep dive on fireflies in the future. A number of years ago, and you can see I always try to put our partners down. Working with partners, we started Bumblebee Watch, and Bumblebee Watch has been really amazing. The idea is you take a picture of the bumblebee, you upload it, we verify all of the photos. We've gotten lots of observations, over 208,000 observations from 47,500 users. But the issue with Bumblebee Watch, it's great. We still use this as a really important platform, but the data is really skewed towards population areas. So we embarked on our Bumblebee Atlas efforts. And so the idea is to have surveys across the landscape, not just in urban areas or along major roads. So participants adopt a randomly assigned grid cell. They do time surveys, over a certain area. And instead of just taking pictures of bumblebees on flowers, they do take those too, but they capture and chill and photograph the bumblebees and then let them go, and then upload the photos. And what this has allowed us to do is to get presence and absence data, and also collect information on habitat preference and threats. It's really been a, a deal changer here in how we understand bumblebees across the regions that we work in. And I want to point out a paper in PNAS that gave a shout out to the Bumblebee Atlas, and said that the Bumblebee Atlas has set a standard for community science programs because we do the in-depth training and we've got good quality control, powerful sampling design, and repeat surveys. And it actually allowed incorporation of the data into this occupancy modeling that was done for this paper. It also leads to direct conservation. And again, that's our goal with everything at Xerces. We started our Atlas program in the Pacific Northwest, and we now have actionable data to really provide place-based management guidance for rare bumblebees across Washington. We're currently doing a project similar to this in Oregon. We'll soon be doing a project similar to this in California as well. And we're now in 20 states with the Bumblebee Atlas effort. We've got over 2,000 participants and over 100,000 observations. And as you can see again, many, many partners that are needed to make this work. Similarly, our Western Monarch Count data harnesses the love of insects and builds a love of insects for a lot of people. Our Western Monarch Count was, I feel, one of the earliest community science programs specifically for insects. It started in 1997, at least along the West Coast. I don't mean to say earliest because we've been doing this in a lot of places. Certainly our earliest attempt. As you can see, over time, the effort has really increased. Last year, we had over 400 participants spend many hours to gather data on monarchs. We then added not long before the pandemic, I guess, been almost a decade now, actually, our Western monarch and milkweed mapper. What we discovered, or didn't really discover, but what we saw was that we had a lot of data for monarchs east of the Rocky Mountains and almost no data for monarchs west of the Rocky Mountains. So we started a platform where people can take pictures of monarchs and milkweeds, upload those, we can verify them. We've have over 70,000 observations to date. And again, this information is really meaningful beyond people getting excited and enthused and becoming advocates. We're able to use this data to do things like habitat suitability models. This was a model done by DILTS at University of Nevada, Reno, to help us decide how and where we put funding to do the greatest conservation effort for the dollar. Been very, very important. We've even been able to come up with timing recommendations on when monarchs are visiting areas, so you could do mowing timing to minimize impact to monarchs. Our second strategy is to build a movement of diverse people who take action for invertebrate conservation. And as I mentioned, the goal is to change attitudes, but then to also provide the tools and the knowledge to actually take action for these animals. It's not just about perceptions. Perceptions are vital. We need to change perceptions of these animals, but it adds that action step to it. One of the ways we do this is through an incredible cadre of volunteers. We have 145 what are called Xerces ambassadors. These are highly trained volunteers who get upfront training. Many of them come with an incredible knowledge base, but we give them the upfront training. We give them the education materials. We provide ongoing assistance. And in 2024 alone, our ambassadors reached 45,000 people in 38 states and a Canadian province. So it's amazing. These are all unpaid people, some of them giving up many, many weekends a year to do this. We have our X-Kids, the science-based activity book for children. As we know, we need to get adults engaged now, but we need to get kids engaged so that as they become adults, they continue this incredible work. This X-Kids targets grades 3 to 5. It's in English and Spanish. And although it is a curriculum that can be used in school, it can also be done by an individual. It can be done by a scout troop at a botanic garden. And we've had over 35,000 X-Kid booklets go out in the last 2 years. We're very excited about this because we see how excited the kids get. And it isn't just learning again. This is kids do have to go through, they have to learn, but then they have to do a service project where that's what planting flowers or going to the neighbors to talk about insects or many, many different things they can do as a service project to earn their badge. It's not just our volunteers, we have staff education as well. Many of our staff are more focused on trainings for land managers, farmers, park staff, even gardeners and others. And so our volunteers have reached 45,000 people. Our staff have reached an additional 52,000 people through these farm walks and trainings and webinars, sometimes very deep dive, sometimes full day workshops that people come to. We are out there educating and providing the tools, but we found a number of years ago that even doing that Many people find it difficult to take that next step to actually, I'm wanting to do this project, but I might not. And I got all this information from Xerces, but it isn't really my background, and I'm not sure exactly what to do. So we started really trying to provide conservation guidance because we feel it's really vital to realize the change. So it's one-on-one assistance, which leads to successful conservation. So everything from habitat design and restoration, integrated pest management, to training land managers to identify bumblebees or freshwater mussels or butterflies, habitat assessments and more, getting out there to really push that change and support the people who want to do projects. So some of this is with wildland managers and providing technical information. So with Forest Service and BLM, we've created 275 invertebrate species fact sheets, as well as management plans, conservation assessments. These are used all the time. I'm doing a timber sale and I'm the biologist and I have to understand that impact. I can pull up this fact sheet on this species that's in this area to understand what the impact might be. Really, really important information that they did not have before we really engaged. We also have USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service partner biologists embedded in offices across the United States. And these biologists work closely with NRCS to provide that conservation support to biodiversity projects. Many people at NRCS, they might have an agronomy background, a weed management background, maybe a soils background. They might be irrigation experts, but there aren't that many people in the NRCS that actually focus on biodiversity. So we bring that expertise on pollinators, bumblebees, monarchs, integrated pest management. And there's a big focus on regenerative and nature-based solutions in all of this work. So it's pretty neat because farmers come to NRCS wanting help, and we can be there directly to help farmers. We can also do train the trainers events for the other biologists at NRCS to provide them the tools to get our message out even more broadly. It's not just terrestrial animals that we work on. We've got major efforts on freshwater mussels, especially in the western United States. We recently developed a standardized survey with tribal entities, as well as U.S. Forest Service, BLM, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So as we're all doing surveys, we're actually talking the same information. There were many different survey efforts, and people were actually, there was no one protocol. We have actually got a protocol for Western mussels that now most everybody is using in surveys. It seems basic, but it isn't actually, and it's vital so we can talk to each other across platforms. We also do direct technical assistance. Just last year alone, we helped move 14,000 mussels out of the way of dam removal projects. Dam removal is vital for biodiversity conservation, but if you're a freshwater mussel downstream, you will likely be smothered and die. And some of these mussels that this person is holding are decades old, and we can collect them and move them out of harm's way upstream and replace them. It's been a really important way to protect some of the rarest animals on the planet. And I do realize these aren't insects, but Xerces works on all invertebrates, not just insects, although insects, as you might imagine, are a main focus. This technical assistance goes to fireflies. We're helping 2 state parks become firefly sanctuaries. Monarch butterflies, we're supporting management across overwintering sites on the West Coast. Advancing policy. I know that policy sometimes makes people a little bit nervous, especially scientists, but I always felt that we really need to advance policy along with getting individuals to step up. And it's something I built into Xerces as Xerces grew. And the scope of our policy work includes pesticide reduction and reform, focus on threatened endangered species, and as well as general biodiversity, sustainable agriculture, focusing on incentives for farmers, and then state level wildlife management. And when I'm talking about policy, to be clear, because I think there's a lot of confusion, we work on the entire policy pipeline from legislative, passing that bill, or in some cases pushing against a bill that might be bad, whether that be at the federal or state or local level. But also working with entities to enforce existing laws to help our agency partners look at their regulations and how these laws pertain to biodiversity, and then that internal decision making, whether it's the Forest Service making a decision on doing a logging project and the impact on invertebrates to a parks department who might be thinking about managing insects by stopping the use of insecticides. We're part of all of this. So, first starting with the regulatory rulemaking, the ESA, the Endangered Species Act, is a really important existing law that it's unfortunate we need it, but for some species, this is the last hope of keeping them from sliding towards extinction. This is the Delhi Sands flower-loving fly. It's one of the coolest flies out there. It's got the incredible life history. It's associated with ants. You really don't find the larvae because they're down in ant nests, and it only lives in a tiny postage stamp area of where it used to live. And it is only extant because of the Endangered Species Act. We work on a variety of very robust petitions, they're called. They're basically status reviews that we get to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to determine whether something should be protected. We do this as a last resort. We are not out there petitioning hundreds of species. We're petitioning the species that if we don't get attention to, they will become extinct, like the Bethany Beach firefly, which was just listed as threatened. We have two other fireflies that are on the brink of extinction that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is looking at now based on our information. Of course, I'll mention the monarch. We helped write the petition to list the monarch butterfly, and it took over a decade for them to propose listing, which they did in December 2024. But even that decade was spent doing a lot of conservation based on our petition and based on our follow-up to that petition. That's the other thing, is we don't throw in a petition unless we're ready to get our hands dirty working on these species with all of these agencies while we wait for a decision to be made. Another regulation issue we work on is large-scale spraying on public lands. What many people don't know is that an agency called the Animal Health Inspection Service, APHIS, Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, works with state and federal agencies to periodically spray huge acreages with highly toxic insecticides. In some cases, we will see millions of acres in 1 year sprayed, and these are mostly public lands. In 2021, 1 million acres was sprayed in Montana. And these insects don't just kill these native grasshoppers, and I do want to point out these native grasshoppers are vital for range health, both as food source for so many animals and because of the way they graze themselves. but it kills a lot of other associated insects. Our work has led to management changes on millions of acres of public lands in the West. When we started this work, there were managers at the Bureau of Land Management and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service who said, we had no idea this was really happening on the lands we manage. And we were looking to the Animal Plant Health Inspection Service to make those calls, right? And we assumed that they were thinking about all of the issues they should think about, which they really weren't. And we've really seen a sea change in how people are looking at this issue, and we've seen millions of acres pulled from spraying. And I will say we've seen millions of acres pulled from spraying, and we have not yet seen a catastrophic insect outbreak, as they had said. If we don't spray, we're going to see so many grasshoppers, it's going to be Armageddon. That has not yet happened. And we are not saying that you should not spray at all, especially as these animals are moving on to private land. What we're saying is that we need better assessments, we need better monitoring, and we need to take a step back. And that now has happened. APHIS has been told they have to take a step back. They have to work with us and other stakeholders to figure out not just how to kill grasshoppers, but how to manage grasshoppers, especially as they might move on private land. It's been a huge, huge win. We also work on federal policy. I will just point out really one area. Xerces was vital in adding language to help conserve native pollinators in the Farm Bill. The 2008 Farm Bill was only going to address honeybees, but we were able to get legislators to understand that native pollinators were really vital. And this has provided hundreds of millions of dollars for research and more hundreds of millions of dollars in cost share funding to farmers. It's been huge. We work on smaller things, like in 2021, we passed a bill that provided millions of dollars for conservation of roadsides. So we do work at the federal level, but much more of our work is actually at the state and local level on everything from pesticides to outside lighting to weed ordinances. I mean, pretty interesting. We've had some success with weed ordinances. There are some cities that if you grow a pollinator garden and it is a pollinator meadow and it is over 18 inches tall, that's considered weeds and they will fine you. So changing these simple things can have really meaningful impacts. Our pesticide work has been really important in Vermont. We passed a law prohibiting the use of neonics for prophylactic seed coatings. So you now actually have to show that there's a potential pest impact, and this could actually stop about 8,000 pounds a year of neonicotinoid use in Vermont alone. I want to point out a special project that we're doing, which is the Insects or Wildlife campaign. Many state wildlife agencies, or at least some, it's getting less, do not identify insects as wildlife. Hence, those wildlife agencies cannot provide funding or any conservation help to these animals. And state wildlife agencies are vital for species conservation. I mean, they manage, over 450 million acres and contribute over $5 billion to conservation. Yet many of them, or not many, but some of them have no authority to manage insects. Interestingly, one of our best talking points is that by focusing on conservation at the state level, we might be able to keep animals off the Endangered Species Act. Remember, I mentioned the Endangered Species Act and how important it is. It is very important, but it should be the last ditch effort. And if we can do conservation early, we can keep animals from getting to that point. So if you look here, the blue-green states are states that do have authority and focus on insects. The red states are states that don't have authority. The yellow states are states with limited or very unclear authority that generally don't work on insects. And I really like, I don't know what color that is exactly, the kind of greeny blue, are states that in the last 2 years we've been able to pass legislation so that they can work on insects. This year, the New Mexico legislature passed legislation to change their agency from Fish and Game to New Mexico Wildlife, and they changed the definition of wildlife to include insects. In 2024, we had a bill in Colorado that did the same thing, and Colorado went even farther in that they have now funded in, I guess, into perpetuity, 6 positions that are focused just on insect conservation, which is the coolest thing to see. So we have active legislation in Nevada and Pennsylvania. Those are other states. Nevada has no authority, and Pennsylvania's is really confusing authority with no authority over terrestrial insects. And we're hopeful that we can see some movement there. Next year, we're hoping to focus on Oregon because it's important that all these states have that authority. All right, last. Strategy 4, of course, is this on the ground habitat. How do we catalyze protection, restoration, and management of habitats across the board, whether it's natural areas or human altered environments, to help invertebrate populations? And we we work across landscapes. We work, farms, pastures, forests, urban farms, community gardens, roadsides. We're able to work in a variety of landscapes, both natural and highly impacted. Um, One project I want to point out is our Living Farms project. Our Living Farms project is changing agriculture in a big way. This is an almond orchard in the San Joaquin Valley of California. Um, you can see it used to be cropped all the way across. We were able to take this old drainage with the help of Silk and Danone, who make almond milk, um, and make a hedgerow that was over a mile long and 50 feet wide. This has just been planted. Once it grows in, it's going to be incredible habitat for these insects, as well as provide for connectivity across the landscape. So Xerces team works with growers, everybody from General Mills to Danone to other companies, as well as farmers that support them on really large scale plantings. And the cool thing about this is the benefit to biodiversity. But as I mentioned in that stacking benefits, there's a benefit for climate resilience, there's a benefit for carbon capture. And there's also actually what we found is a benefit to employees who have off-season work, and a benefit to native plant nurseries and seed companies who we can help produce lots of plants, and they can build markets for them. And we know that these projects both provide habitat and provide for that connectivity, which is really important. This is another study by Diltz et al. With folks at the University of Nevada, Reno, that found that 1 million acres of habitat could be added in the Central Valley by managing pesticides and restoring field edges, drainage ditches, uncultivated borders. It's basically going from this to that, and from this to that. We have put in over 100 miles of hedgerows and border plantings in the past year and a half alone. We're getting up to about 400 miles over the past several years. We're also looking at interesting and novel ways to do planting in between, cover crop planting in between rows. This is a native plant cover crop that really provides for insects and can help provide soil health and carbon sequestration. And we're focused, of course, across the seasons, from early spring to fall at these sites to have that overall blooming. I want to end with two sort of standalone projects that actually integrate all four of our strategies into one project. And the first is Bee City USA. Um, Bee City USA mobilizes communities to sustain pollinators by providing them with habitat, doing outreach, and dealing with pesticides. And there's the policy part of this, because the way this works is to become a bee city, the city council has to pass a resolution, and the parks department has to have an integrated pest management plan. With Bee Campus, the universities have to have an integrated pest management plan. It has to be signed by the dean of the college, and there has to be service learning. But it's really neat because we can help entities do conservation, but this conservation can be their own. They can make it their own to do what their best strengths are, whether that is a lot of habitat and some service learning, or a lot of service learning and a little habitat, pesticide changes, all of the above. So since 2018, we have taken this Bee City from a very small, I think there were 50 or 60 cities, to 420 Bee cities and campuses across the US. And they're doing incredibly meaningful work. They've completed over 7,000 pollinator habitat projects in total as of actually 2023. We're just looking at our 2024 data. 92% of affiliates report changing pesticide use, from switching to all organic products, or eliminating all pesticide use, or at least halting neonics, or changing and halting cosmetic practices. That's really neat to see. They're reaching a lot of people. Our city and campus network has engaged over 1.7 million people. Again, this is as of the end of 2003. We were just looking at the numbers from 2004 now. So it's really meaningful and really cool to see that. I also want to point out our Habitat Kit program, because we really feel that it doesn't matter who you are, what walk of life you are, where you live, you should have an opportunity to have habitat close to you. You should have an opportunity to help with conservation. And this is what our Habitat Kit program does. So Xerces Habitat Kits provide climate smart, native pollinator plants to project partners who are willing to provide the time, labor, and land to develop habitats for pollinators. So we work with nurseries, grow out the plants, we pay for all the plants, and people apply to get them, and just have to show that they can get them in the ground and that they can manage them in the long term. And this is really important, because cost of materials is a serious issue for a lot of small restoration projects. Many people have uncertainty about what to plant or where to get it, and many of them have a lack of technical knowledge and experience with restoration. Our team comes in and helps with all of those, allowing these folks to use shovels and come in and do the hard work of restoration. So there are multiple goals of this program. Of course, creating habitat. We get habitat in the ground, and what we see is that the partners get really excited and actually often create additional habitat patches, or nesting and overwintering habitat. It's really neat to see how people lean in. These are bee-safe plants. Studies show that a lot of nurseries where you buy plants from have harmful pesticides. in the plants you're buying for pollinator conservation. We work with nurseries to change that. And all of our plants are sourced without toxic pesticides in them. These are all native plants that are locally or regionally sourced, and we're focused on changing climate conditions. And there's a broad diversity of plants because, as we know, diversity begets diversity. You get diversity of plants, you get a diversity of insects, which helps that diversity of plants. And the focus is on habitats for all people and landscapes. So we've got an ecological diversity of kits. These kits are designed for the places they're going to be in. There's working lands, urban gardens, schools. We're working with tribal entities, also in natural areas. But we have a major focus on improving green spaces in low-income, highly developed neighborhoods and in community-oriented urban farming as well. Getting these plants into the hands of people that are excited to plant them. We then provide that conservation assistance, the technical assistance that people need. We can support a project from planning to site prep to installation to follow it. Some of these folks that get these kits don't need our help. They might just have a phone call. Some of them need us actually on site, and we're able to do whatever is needed most. This has been huge. We've had over 500,000 plants distributed since 2019. This is as of last year. We already have our kit program running this year. We've got 7 regions and 2 cities that we're focused on. Really, really neat project. It also is a great opportunity to inspire the public to do more, and we see this all the time. This is in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We've done habitat kits to try to provide connectivity, and especially in areas that have a lot of concrete. And the city has stepped up, community groups have stepped up. We're seeing a lot of habitat added just beyond our kits. So to just sum up, this stuff works, through partnerships. And again, it's key. We've protected and restored over 4 million acres of habitat and improved management and improved habitat on tens of millions of additional acres. We're seeing really positive change. And I would say that the take-home message is that working in partnership pays off. Whether it's working with researchers like you, other nonprofits, the land managers, companies, neighbors, coordination and communication are really the keys to success. And I think the good news that I always like to point out at the end of all my talks is that insects are resilient and conservation actions work. I go to many of our sites, whether they're in natural areas, whether they're in a garden or a park, and see an increase in diversity and abundance. So we can do this, and we can do this if we're all working together. I do want to point out last that there are other groups out there doing great work. I know that the Research Conservation Network is global. You've got Bug Life in the UK, you've got Butterfly Conservation UK and Butterfly Conservation Europe. You've got Invertebrates Australia. There are more and more groups. There are other local groups. So you may be able to form partnerships wherever you are. We're happy to form partnerships here at Xerces and happy to talk more about that, but didn't want to say that it's just Xerces doing great work. There's other groups doing that as well. And with that, I always have to end with Peter's wonderful photo of this leaping weevil that just always makes me smile and be happy. So thank you all.